Hello, my name is Andrew Gonzalez. I'm one of the vascular surgeons at Indiana University School of Medicine, and I'm Associate Director for Data Science at the Regenstrief Institute. So I wanted to talk about the use of AI and ML to address some research gaps. Broadly speaking, there are three classes of research gaps. There's technical gaps, knowledge gaps, and implementation gaps. Technical gaps are essentially saying we know what to do, but somehow we're limited by time, money, or personnel. Knowledge gaps basically say we don't know what to do, and we also don't know how to get there. Implementation gaps are we know what to do, but we just don't know how to optimize it. So I'll give you some examples from quantitative research, because that's what I know best. So extracting, information from operative notes is a kind of pretty common task that we do in surgery. If you have 50 notes, you can have, an army of med students do that, and it'll take you a week, a month, whatever the number is. But what if you had 50,000 notes? The only way to do that at scale is with some type of natural language processing. Similarly, in computer vision, the same can be said for going through X-ray findings. If you want to diagnose pneumothoraces based on the image itself, not the words in the report of the image, that's something that you probably wouldn't be able to do if the number was, over several hundred. In terms of knowledge gaps, an example of this would be like heterogeneity and treatment effect. If you wanted to use a NLP pipeline to characterize what the patient describes their symptoms as, and then use that as an outcome for some type of regression analysis, building the NLP pipeline to define that outcome, if it's not recorded in a structured data field, is something that we could assist with. Finally, an implementation gap is something like there's a cardiac arrest smart recording system that uses A/B testing to provide real-time analytics, and you want to do a version where, the heart rate is depicted using Arabic numerals versus Roman numerals. That type of A/B testing is something where the design is not necessarily improved by AI or machine learning, but your ability to analyze the data is something that could be done at scale through machine learning methods. Like I said, we're not really going to go through qualitative or implementation science, but clearly there are opportunities there as well. So you can pause the recording and look at this if you wanted to read through the examples. In terms of opportunity for partnership with iCHAI, I would say there's sort of 6 areas we need to know about in order to figure out if this relationship would be beneficial. So first, what is your clinical task? What data do you have? What labels do you have? What's your project timeline? What's the plan for scaling, and what are the funding opportunities? So in terms of tasks, the services that we provide would be largely dealing with taking your downstream clinical tasks. I want to identify cases of X disease, and breaking down into constituent machine learning tasks. Essentially, it's a decomposition function, as well as providing a minimal viable experiment. Sometimes the downstream clinical task is something that we can't affect at scale, or would be challenging or prohibitive to do, but determining something where the pipeline would be the minimal viable pipeline is something that we could do. There's services that we don't provide, so significance level, we're not a statistics shop where we're going to do sample size calculations and the like. And similarly, we're not really assisting with the implementation science aspect of it, like deploying in real life for production level or with clinical trials. In terms of data, we can assist with identifying the data that you need to do this minimally viable experiment, as well as assessing feasibility. Do you think of this like a quantitative power calculation? So the task that you want to do is to diagnose X rare disease. You've got 50 examples. Is that possible to do? Or to build a pipeline that can do that with external data, we can help you understand if that is possible versus if it's not possible. There's some services in the data realm that we don't provide, namely we don't do data collection and we don't do primary labeling. So you need to have people in your lab or people that you can hire who are available to do primary labeling. So we have software that you can use that allows you to label, and then that label data can be ingested into our machine learning pipelines. But in terms of actually reading through thousands of op notes and filling out whether or not it was left side or right side, that's not something that we would be participating in. In terms of labels, we can assist with creation of an ontology for labeling. Sometimes there's a clearly defined clinical ontology, but what needs to happen is each element of that ontology needs to get broken down into a computable phenotypes. So think about it like, I don't know, New York heart classification. Like, what exactly are the elements that you would read through a note or would look for in structured data fields in order to create a computable phenotype in case the EHR doesn't include the like New York heart classification. Similarly, we can come with strategies that can enhance the labeling quality, robustness, and granularity to assist with reducing your technical debt as you move from a prototyping into a production or like R01 level project. Things that we don't do, again, no primary data labeling. In terms of timeline, we can assist with planning for both the minimal viable experiment as well as like how would scaling work. In terms of scaling, this is sort of a bespoke issue, so let's talk more offline. And then in terms of funding, we can assist with co-authorship and manuscript preparation. So we're not going to write the papers for you, but we would collaborate as co-authors, which would allow us to generate a track record of collaboration for future bigger grant submissions or what have you. Additionally, we can assist with strategic advice on writing viewpoints that could be used to identify gaps for basically, think about it like meta-level grantsmanship. And then we can estimate hardware, software, and personnel costs for projects to assist with writing like budget request or and then finally, identification of funding opportunities where we might have collaborations for research. One of the things we don't do is we are not grant writers, so we're not going to write the grant. We may assist with certain parts of it, but think about us like co-Is as opposed to like a grant writing service. So this is kind of our framework for thinking about how we're, from a strategic standpoint, able to add value. So we can assist with creation of proof of concepts by taking a clinical question, determining what model capabilities you need, and what testing you would need to prove that those model capabilities are possible. Assist with understanding system capabilities as well as what testing you would need to prove that that system works as intended. And then implementation, as we discussed, is the next phase, but that's not something that right now we have the workforce or resources to deal with. The second green row is dealing with the minimal viable experiment, and then the third row is dealing with scaling. So think about this as like a proof of concept would be like a K grant or something. A minimal viable experiment would be like an R21 to generate that preliminary data, and then proof of scale would be like an R01. So in terms of optimizing our level of engagement and sharing, there's a few different options. So we can start with sharing data. Well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't say we should start with. One option is sharing data. So this is kind of more performance focused. So by combining our data, we have the ability to potentially create better models. For people who are within the IU ecosystem, this may not make sense because your data is my data. But for people external to the system, that may make sense. But let's talk about it. There can also be sharing of weights, so this is sort of more privacy focused, so we don't actually need to see your data. Again, in the IU Health ecosystem, it makes a lot more sense to just add me to your IRB than it does to create a complicated weight sharing system. We can share models. Think about this as external validation, that will it drift. So everybody says all these great things about their model, but few models are externally validated. So that essentially means you bring your model and we test on our data and we see what happens. We can also assist with developing strategies for using existing QI initiatives and collaborative. This is sort of more impact focused. So if you have a collaborative where, I don't know, your clinical nurse abstractor is getting overwhelmed and you need to be able to do whatever task he or she is doing at scale, we can assist with that. And the final area, which we're interested in but currently not doing any active projects with, is differential privacy. So this is more like purely scientific discovery focused. So think about differential privacy as, let's say you have a bunch of patient records. We can wipe the PHI and hide that. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that patients aren't individually identifiable. So you can use advanced type of techniques and essentially figure out who patients are, even if you've individually accounted for, like we, blacked out all the names or what have you. So differential privacy is a framework that allows for us to implement machine learning pipelines using data that basically prevents you from, or anybody from, individually identifying people within that data set while preserving the overall continuity and capability of that data set. So again, we're not doing anything super active in this area, but if you are interested in differential privacy and you want to assist with developing some clinical use cases or external validation, we would be happy to work with you on opportunities to develop science in that arena. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via one of these social media outlets. I'm actually now on Blue Sky as well, so you can do that if that's a little bit easier for you. Thanks so much for your time.